This video is an overview of the first of 4 epochs in human communication. It begins with the emergence of nonverbal communication and ends with the invention of written language. We'll start with nonverbal origins, which takes place between 2 million and 50,000 years BCE. Early human communication began as a primarily nonverbal endeavor involving things like gestures, facial expressions, body movements, as well as symbolic utterances like laughs, screams, and grunts. Anthropologist Merlin Donald's work, The Origins of the Modern Mind, asserts that before speech, early humans relied on mimetic communication to convey meaning, to facilitate cooperation, and to share knowledge essential for survival. Recent studies in paleontology, such as Kim Sterelny's 2012 book, The Evolved Apprentice, corroborate Donald's theories, highlighting archaeological evidence such as symbolic markings and intentional burial sites, which suggest complex nonverbal symbolic communication among early hominins. Thus, early hominins had the cognitive ability to create, interpret, and share abstract representations. That is, they could communicate. Artifacts containing symbolic markings are evidence of intentional acts of meaning-making that transcend practical functions. Intentional burial sites, especially when accompanied by artifacts or carefully arranged remains, imply ritualistic behavior and awareness of concepts like mortality, identity, and more than likely belief systems that include some concept of an afterlife, all of which require sophisticated symbolic thought and shared meanings among group members. Next, we'll look at the development of verbal communication, which took place approximately 100,000 to 50,000 years BCE. Speech, in the form of verbal language, represented a significant evolutionary milestone, to say the least. One that is discussed in a number of books. 2 that I'll recommend are The Alphabet versus the Goddess by Leonard Shlain and The Dawn of Everything by Graeber and Wingrove. Though these books aren't only about the emergence and impact of language, the topic is central to much of their analysis. In his book Before the Dawn, which was recommended by one of my colleagues, Nicholas Wade elucidates the evolutionary origins of humans and the development of language. Wade links Noam Chomsky's theory of universal grammar together with other language theories put forward by evolutionary psychologists like Robin Dunbar, Jeffrey Miller, and Steven Pinker. Contemporary genetic research supports observations made by early language theorists, highlighting that genetic mutations affecting brain regions linked to speech coincide with significant leaps in linguistic capability. Though this took thousands of generations to complete, that's actually rather fast in terms of prehistoric timelines. The opening act of the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey might be borrowed as a metaphor for such abruptness. The impact of oration and storytelling on social structures, culture, and individual identity construction cannot be understated. This time in the first epoch of human communication is characterized by rich, complex oral traditions that functioned as creative expressions and entertainment as much as they did to preserve memory, culture, and history in the absence of written records. Early stories such as the Iliad and the Odyssey, though transcribed much later, are evidence of the narrative sophistication of oral cultures. Such stories were told again and again for hundreds of years before they were finally written down. Though written language would have many advantages, it also caused humans to lose something. In Orality and Literacy by Walter Ong, the author argues that orality fosters memory strategies, repetitive stylistic elements, and community-centered communication practices distinct from those that arise after writing systems emerged. Implications are further presented by scholars like Leonard Shlain, who suggest that early written language was used by men to substantially rewrite goddess-centric religious narratives, diminishing women's status in the world. Written language also resulted in more power being held by authority figures, since laws and statutes could be made more precise and could be handed down in discrete and specific forms. Contracts, agreements, and even individual ownership of land and objects became much more common, eventually becoming the central norm of civil society. Historical records, education, and even religions became more rigid and resistant to cultural adaptation. No longer would ideas accommodate existing cultural beliefs. Rather, cultural beliefs would have to change to accommodate the authority of written language. For communication studies scholars, understanding this period provides context for analyzing contemporary communication practices, not only because the complex systems of communication we use today had very humble beginnings, but also because these practices are still with us. Nonverbal communication makes up the vast majority of interpersonal interactions. Orality is the essence of the narratives that drive our music and movie industries. For strategic communication scholars and practitioners, this knowledge is a reminder that fundamental communication mechanisms like storytelling, nonverbal messaging, and symbolic expression still play a central role in crafting and analyzing effective messages. Thanks for listening.